I asked Kelly Rowland why Beyoncé never ages, and I wish I'd never heard the answer. It's not the secret you think it is, and it's definitely not something you can ever forget. The truth behind Beyoncé's agelessness isn't just skin deep, it's something much darker, something that comes with a cost that no one talks about. Once you know, there's no turning back. I learned that the hard way. And now, so will you. I'd seen it 1,000 times. The perfect smile, the flawless skin, the way Beyoncé always seemed to glow. Time never touched her, not even a hint of a wrinkle, not a single sign of aging. It was like she was locked in some kind of suspended perfection. Everyone noticed it, but no one ever talked about it. It was one of those unspoken things, the elephant in the room, the truth nobody dared bring up. It was always there, in the back of my mind, lingering. How could someone remain so ageless? It wasn't just good genetics or expensive beauty treatments. There was something else, something that no one could quite explain. I'd been in the industry for years, worked with the biggest stars, seen trends and fads come and go. But Beyoncé, she was something else entirely. Her beauty, her presence, her strength, there was no time limit to it. And it was always there, in the spotlight, untouched by the years. No one seemed to notice that she never aged. Or if they did, no one dared ask. I'd worked in the shadows of fame for so long, and I'd seen the transformation of people as they chased after success. The glamour of it all, the fast-paced life that chewed people up and spit them out. Aging was inevitable in this world, at least for everyone except Beyoncé. And that was the part that gnawed at me, day in and day out. It wasn't even just about her looks. She was flawless. Yes, that was obvious. But it was more than that. It was the way she carried herself, the way she never seemed to tire. How could she be so perfect even after working long hours, performing, traveling, doing everything at the highest level day after day? Most people, even the most seasoned professionals, would break down after a while. But Beyoncé, she was impervious to it all. People would talk about her in awe, calling her a goddess, some kind of mythical figure. But it didn't make sense. The human body, the human mind, they all break down eventually. But Beyoncé, she never seemed to age. She was always radiant, always present, and always perfect. I began to obsess over it, quietly, watching her from the sidelines, trying to catch glimpses of the real person behind the public image. I wasn't the only one. Everyone in the industry whispered about it behind closed doors, but nobody ever dared to say anything out loud. How could they? Who would question perfection? Who would be brave enough to ask, how does she do it? The first time I asked the question out loud, I did it in passing. A joke, really. How does Beyoncé stay so young? I half laughed, and the people around me laughed too, but their eyes shifted uncomfortably. It was clear they knew something I didn't, something none of us dared to speak about. But I kept wondering. Everyone had their theories, of course. The top-of-the-line skincare products, the best plastic surgeons money could buy, the insane fitness regimen. Maybe it was all of that. Maybe she had found some secret formula that kept her from aging while the rest of us slowly succumbed to time's inevitable grasp. But the more I saw her, the more I was sure it was something else. Something unnatural. I wasn't alone in my thoughts. There were whispers. Some said it was the magic of her talent, that she had been touched by some otherworldly force that kept her ageless, while others said it was a strictly scientific secret. But no one ever dared bring it up directly to her, as if even asking would trigger something catastrophic, as if the question itself was dangerous. Then, one day, in a quiet corner of the soundstage, I saw Kelly Rowland sitting alone. She wasn't with the usual group, wasn't surrounded by assistants or handlers. She was just there, sipping her water, looking lost in thought, as though the weight of the world had finally caught up with her. It was rare to see her like that. Usually, she was so poised, so graceful, so controlled. I hadn't spoken to Kelly much in years, but something about the way she was sitting there, so distant and pensive, pulled me in. I hadn't expected to say anything, but before I could stop myself, the question I'd been carrying for so long slipped out. "Kelly?" I said, hesitant, unsure if I was even allowed to ask. I gotta ask, how does she do it? I mean, how does Beyoncé never age? What's her secret? There was a long pause. For a moment, Kelly didn't say anything. She just stared at me, her eyes narrowing slightly. The silence between us grew heavy, almost palpable. Her gaze seemed to cut right through me, like she was seeing something that I wasn't ready to understand. She wasn't looking at me the way she usually did, with that warm familiarity, but instead with something else, something cautious. The air around us seemed to shift. It was as though the room itself was holding its breath. The lights above flickered, casting long shadows over her face. And then she spoke. Her voice was low, almost like a whisper. "Beyoncé's secret. She's not what you think she is." I felt my heart skip a beat. I was expecting a light-hearted answer, maybe a chuckle, but not this. Not her voice, filled with a raw kind of fear that sent chills down my spine. "Not human?" I repeated, barely able to believe the words coming out of my mouth. Kelly's eyes flickered to the side, then back at me. "At least, not in the way you think. She made a choice a long time ago, a deal. She gave up something precious to stay perfect." She paused, looking over her shoulder like she was afraid someone might hear us. "And that price? It's not just about her. It's about everyone around her, everyone who gets too close. And once you really know, you can't walk away." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I couldn't process them, couldn't make sense of what she was saying. My mind raced, trying to put the pieces together. What did she mean by not human? What kind of deal? And what was this price she spoke of? The fear in Kelly's voice was so real, so raw, it made my own pulse quicken. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't some wild conspiracy theory. This was real, and I was caught in it now. I should have walked away. I should have left, gone back to my life, pretending I hadn't heard any of this. But I didn't. The question was out there now, and the darkness it hinted at had already begun pulling me in. But this was just the beginning. The truth was much worse than I could have ever imagined. And I was about to find out just how deep it went. After that conversation with Kelly, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Her words echoed in my mind, over and over again. She's not human. What did that even mean? I wanted to believe it was just some kind of exaggeration, but there was a weight to Kelly's expression that I couldn't ignore. It was the kind of look someone gives you when they've seen something you can't understand. something that's left them scarred. For the next few days, I stayed away from Beyoncé. I wasn't sure if I was scared or just unsure of what to do next. I couldn't stop thinking about the way Kelly had said, "Once you know, you can't walk away." Those words haunted me. But curiosity has a way of getting under your skin, and soon I found myself searching for answers. I spoke to people who had worked with Beyoncé for years, trying to find a pattern, a clue, something that could explain the impossibility of her agelessness. The more I dug, the more unsettling things became. It wasn't just about her looks. It was her energy, her presence. I began to notice that no one could be around her for too long without feeling some sort of subtle shift. It was like a magnetic pull, a force field that kept people close, and yet made them uncomfortable at the same time. It was as if she didn't need to say anything to maintain control of a room. She simply was. I spoke to a former stylist who had worked with Beyoncé for years. She was now in hiding, refusing to speak to anyone who might still be in Beyoncé's circle. She was jittery, constantly looking over her shoulder as if she was afraid someone might overhear her. "I don't know why you want to know," the stylist said, her voice shaky. "You really don't want to get involved in this, trust me. It's not worth it." But she told me anyway. "It wasn't always like this," she began. "Beyoncé used to be different, but she changed after she made the deal." I tried to stay calm, trying not to let my growing fear show. "What deal?" I asked. The stylist hesitated, then lowered her voice even more. "There are things in this industry that people like you and me never talk about. People don't know how deep this world goes, but Beyoncé, she made a choice a long time ago. She sold a piece of herself to stay on top, to stay perfect." I leaned in, barely able to breathe. "What did she sell?" The stylist's eyes widened in terror. "Her soul, or at least a part of it. She made a deal with someone who could keep her at the peak of her beauty, her youth. But the price was everything else." She paused, her voice barely above a whisper. "The people around her, we're all caught up in it now." I didn't want to believe her, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Beyoncé didn't just look perfect. She was perfect, and it wasn't natural. It was something more, something unnatural. But what was even more terrifying was that this wasn't just about her. It was about everyone who was close to her, who had worked for her, who had been caught in her orbit. I tried to push the thought out of my mind, but it clung to me, growing stronger. I started to see patterns. People who worked with her too long, stylists, makeup artists, dancers, would slowly disappear. It wasn't like they quit. No, it was more sinister than that. They were replaced. I spoke to a former dancer who'd been with Beyoncé for years before mysteriously vanishing from the scene. She too was terrified to speak, but after some convincing, she opened up. "You think she's perfect? You think she just found a way to keep her youth?" the dancer asked, a wild look in her eyes. "I'll tell you what happened. She gave it away. She gave away everything. And now we're all paying for it. You ever notice how some of us just disappear? How people just vanish from her life?" I nodded, feeling a cold sweat creep down my spine. "What happened to them?" "They're gone. And not just gone, used. They gave their lives for her. And now, they're just shadows. That's how it works. You can't ask for something for free without it costing someone else everything. The pieces were finally falling into place. Beyoncé's agelessness wasn't a miracle. It was a curse. She had made a deal, and the people closest to her were paying the price for it. But what really chilled me was when the dancer added, "And you're getting too close. You better stop digging before they come for you too." At that moment, I realized I was already in too deep. The truth I had uncovered wasn't just some backstage gossip. It was a horrifying reality. I had been pulled into something far bigger than I ever imagined. The next day, I was sitting alone in my office, staring at a picture of Beyoncé on my phone. The flawless face, the glowing skin. How could something so beautiful, so perfect, be the result of something so dark, so twisted? But I knew the truth now, and I couldn't unknow it. I was just about to start digging deeper, finding more people who knew what I was beginning to understand, when I got a message. It was from an unknown number. All it said was, "You're too close. Stop, or you'll be next." I should have listened. I should have dropped it right there. But it was too late. The truth was already in my blood, and there was no walking away now. I couldn't let it go. The warnings, the chilling messages, they only made me more determined. I had stepped into something I couldn't ignore, and now I couldn't escape it. The deeper I dug, the more I realized that Beyoncé's beauty wasn't just a product of money or fame. It wasn't even something as simple as surgery or advanced treatments. No, this was something far worse. I knew I was getting dangerously close to the truth, and the closer I got, the more I felt like someone was watching me. The feeling was unnerving, like being hunted by an unseen predator. But the allure of the truth was too powerful. I couldn't turn back now. I managed to track down one of the few people who might know the full extent of what had happened to Beyoncé, the former manager who had left the business after a mysterious fallout. They'd been with her in the early days, long before her fame reached stratospheric levels. From what I'd been told, this person had seen it all. Or at least, they thought they had. Meeting them was nothing short of surreal. I expected someone cold, calculating, a person who had been hardened by years in the business. But this person was different. They were paranoid, twitchy, constantly glancing over their shoulder as though they feared someone would overhear. "I don't know why you want to know this," the former manager said, voice low and shaky, as if sharing the truth was a burden they were unwilling to bear. "I've tried to forget. I tried to leave it behind. I didn't hesitate. Tell me. I need to know. What's the truth?" They sighed deeply, looking like they were about to crack under the weight of their own memories. It's not just fame. It's not just looks. It's a curse, a deal. Beyoncé made it a long time ago, but it's not a contract with some record label. It's with something older, something more powerful than anyone could imagine. I leaned forward, trying to process what they were saying. "What kind of deal?" The former manager's eyes darted around the room before they spoke, as if afraid someone might hear. It was a price she had to pay to stay at the top, to remain perfect. The deal was simple. Keep her youth, her beauty, her talent, and in return, she would give up something. They paused, choking on the words. her soul, or at least a part of it. My breath caught in my throat. I had suspected something supernatural was at play, but hearing it out loud from someone who had been there, it was a different kind of fear. A part of her soul? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Not just her soul. It was her humanity, they replied, voice cracking. She gave up her connection to the real world. She became something else, something immortal, but at a price. The more she stays perfect, the more she has to sacrifice. She feeds off the energy of those around her. The people closest to her are the ones who pay the price. I felt a chill spread through me, as though the air around us had become thick and suffocating. And the people who disappear? I asked, already knowing the answer. They're the sacrifices, the former manager said flatly. They don't die, they just vanish. They become part of her. Her perfection comes at the expense of their lives. And once you're part of her world, there's no way out. The horror of it sank in slowly, like ice crawling through my veins. Beyoncé had made a choice, a horrific, irreversible choice, and everyone around her had paid the price. People who worked for her, loved her, trusted her, were slowly consumed, disappearing into the shadows. But it's not just them, is it? I pressed, my heart pounding. It's me too, isn't it? You're telling me that I'm part of it now too? The former manager didn't answer immediately. They just stared at me, a look of pity in their eyes. Then they nodded. You got too close. And now it's too late. You're part of the curse now. I could feel my pulse quicken. I had become another link in the chain. I wasn't just an observer anymore. I was involved. I was part of the price. Before I could say anything, the manager grabbed my arm, their grip tight, desperate. You have to get out. You have to stop before it's too late. If you keep digging, if you keep asking, you'll never escape. They'll come for you. They'll take you too. I pulled away, shaking. This was too much. I had never wanted to know all of this. I never asked for the truth, but now it was staring me in the face and there was no turning back. I knew the truth now. Beyoncé's beauty, her agelessness, wasn't a gift. It was a curse. And the price wasn't just paid in beauty or youth. It was paid in the lives of everyone around her. And there was no way to stop it. I wanted to scream, to run, but I couldn't. I was already trapped. I had learned too much, and in this world, once you knew the truth, it was already too late. There was no walking away. No one could escape. The manager's warnings rang in my ears as I left their office. They'll come for you. But the worst part, the curse wasn't just about Beyoncé anymore. It had already taken root in my own life, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. The days that followed my meeting with the former manager were a blur. The warning had hit me harder than I was willing to admit. You're part of the curse now. The words echoed in my mind constantly, like a broken record. But it wasn't just the terror that was consuming me. It was the truth. The truth that had been slowly unfolding before me. A truth that had once been hidden behind the glitz and glamour of fame. The more I thought about it, the more I realized the sheer magnitude of what I had uncovered. This wasn't just about Beyoncé anymore. This wasn't just about her agelessness or the supernatural deal she had made. No, the real horror was much worse. It was the pact. The deal she had struck wasn't just with some unknown force. It was with the system itself. A system that didn't just demand silence. It demanded obedience, and it claimed anyone who dared to speak up. I had heard whispers about the pact before. Casual comments from people who worked for Beyoncé. But no one ever elaborated. It wasn't a secret. It was an unspoken rule. One that everyone in the industry was expected to follow without question. Don't speak of the deal. Don't ask questions. Just work. Just be quiet. I reached out to another former associate of Beyoncé's, someone who had worked closely with her during the peak of her fame. This person had vanished from the public eye for years, and I found them living in a small, remote apartment far from the life they once knew. The door opened, and I was greeted by a gaunt face, hollowed eyes, someone who looked more like a ghost than a person. "You shouldn't be here," they whispered, almost as if they were talking to themselves. "It's too dangerous to ask these things. You're getting too close." "I need to know," I said, trying to steady my shaking voice. "I need to understand what's going on." They motioned for me to sit. "You don't, but you're already in it, aren't you? You've already crossed the line." They laughed, but it wasn't a laugh. It was the hollow sound of someone who had lost everything. "The pact," they said, staring off into the distance. "It's not just about what Beyoncé wanted. It's about what the industry needed to stay in power. You see, Beyoncé, she was chosen. She was never meant to age, never meant to die. She's been kept in this bubble of perfection, surrounded by people who've paid the price. Everyone who works for her, who gets close to her, they sign this silent agreement, a pact to remain silent. If you don't, you pay the price." I leaned forward, barely able to process what they were saying. "What do you mean, pay the price?" "Death isn't the worst thing that can happen," they whispered, a trace of fear creeping into their voice. "It's worse than that. People don't die, they just vanish, they fade away. You lose yourself. You become a shadow of who you were. The pact ensures that the secret stays buried. If you speak, if you break the silence, you're erased. And not just you, you'll drag anyone else who knows the truth into it too." I felt a cold wave of panic flood through me. This was real. This wasn't some figment of an overactive imagination or the ramblings of paranoid people in the industry. This was the ugly truth behind the curtain. The terrifying price of perfection. And I was part of it now. I tried to pull myself together to keep my composure. "So, everyone just stays silent. No one ever questions it." "That's the thing," the former associate said. "No one wants to speak. Not after you understand what's at stake. The curse, the pact. It's a force bigger than any of us. Once you're in it, you don't get out. You stop asking questions. You stop caring about the truth. You become part of the machine." I could feel my heart racing. I was suffocating under the weight of this knowledge. It was like I had been thrust into a world I wasn't meant to see. And now, there was no way out. "What happens if someone breaks the pact?" I asked, my voice trembling. "They're erased," the associate repeated, their eyes darkening. "Their existence is wiped from the records. They become invisible, forgotten. No one remembers them, not even the people who loved them. They simply vanish." I felt a chill grip me. What was worse than death? Being forgotten. It was a fate worse than anything I could imagine. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that the more I listened, the more I understood. I was already in danger. The truth I knew now, the knowledge I carried, it made me a target. I wanted to run. I wanted to escape from all of it, but I couldn't. I had already crossed the line. I was already caught in the web, and there was no way out. The pact was real. The silence was real. And if I broke it, if I spoke out, I knew what would happen. The curse would claim me too. The associate grabbed my arm as I stood to leave. "You don't understand," they whispered. "They'll come for you. They'll take everything, and you'll never escape." I pulled away, fear tightening in my chest. I didn't want to believe them, but deep down, I knew they were right. The closer I got to the truth, the more I realized there was no escape from this nightmare. The pact had already claimed me. I was already part of the system, part of the price, and there was no turning back. I left their apartment, but as I stepped into the street, I could feel the weight of the curse following me, pressing down on me, suffocating me. I had asked too many questions, uncovered too many secrets. I was already doomed. But this wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning. The weight of everything I'd uncovered was starting to take its toll. I couldn't think straight anymore. Every corner I turned, I was haunted by shadows, by people who had vanished from Beyoncé's life, their faces now blurred, their names forgotten. I couldn't unsee it. I couldn't ignore the truth that had wrapped its fingers around my neck, squeezing tighter every day. There was no escaping it. I had walked too far down this road. The more I learned, the more I understood the true cost of perfection. Beyoncé wasn't just a product of the industry. She was a machine, and the people who worked for her, who adored her, were nothing more than fuel for that machine. It wasn't about fame. It wasn't about money. It was about feeding the unquenchable hunger of the curse that kept her perfect. I kept digging. I had no choice. It was like I was being pulled into a vortex that would devour me whole if I didn't keep going. I needed to know everything, and the deeper I went, the darker it got. I found another former member of Beyoncé's inner circle, a personal assistant who had worked with her for years before disappearing from the spotlight. This person was different than the others. They didn't live in fear. They weren't hiding from the truth. They had embraced it. "I know what you're here for," they said, their eyes glinting with a strange intensity when I knocked on their door. "You want to know about the price of perfection, don't you?" I nodded, unable to find the words to respond. Everything I had heard so far, everything I had uncovered, was leading to the same terrifying conclusion. Beyoncé had made a deal to stay ageless, and everyone around her was paying the price for it. The assistant studied me for a moment, then invited me in. "I can tell you what you need to know, but you should understand one thing first," they said, pouring us both a drink. "Once you step into this world, it changes you. You can never go back." "What do you mean?" I asked, leaning forward. "You don't get it," they said with a bitter laugh. "It's not just about the sacrifices. It's not just about people vanishing. It's about what happens when you get too close to her, when you start becoming part of the machine. The curse doesn't just take from you, it consumes you." The weight of their words settled into my chest like a stone. I had been so focused on Beyoncé and the people she had consumed, I hadn't stopped to think about what it meant for the people who worked with her. The assistants, the stylists, the dancers. They were the ones who kept the machine running. They were the ones who paid the real price. The assistant went on. When you work for someone like Beyoncé, you think you're living the dream. You think you're getting close to something untouchable. But the closer you get, the more you realize you're just feeding into this never-ending cycle. You lose your sense of self. You start to become a reflection of her until you're nothing but a shadow. I was getting chills. It was like I was starting to see the full picture now. Every person who worked for her, who was drawn into her orbit, was slowly being consumed by it. It wasn't just a matter of fame or wealth. It was a sacrifice, a slow death of everything that made you who you were. What happens when you give everything for someone like her? I asked. You become a ghost, the assistant replied. You lose your identity. Your memories fade. Your essence is drained. You're not even a person anymore. You're just a part of her world, a cog in the machine. My heart pounded. This was it. This was the horrifying reality of perfection. Beyoncé wasn't just ageless because of some miracle. It was because she had taken everything from those around her. She had consumed their lives, their futures, their very souls. And she kept doing it, day after day, feeding the machine, feeding the curse. I felt dizzy as the truth hit me. The people closest to her, those who worked tirelessly to maintain her image, were nothing more than empty vessels. They were barely alive, stuck in a cycle that drained them, erasing them bit by bit. And now, I realized the worst part of all. I had become part of that cycle. I wasn't just a witness anymore. I wasn't an outsider looking in. I had crossed the line. I had dug too deep, asked too many questions. I had already been consumed. The curse didn't just take away the people around her. It started with them, and it would eventually reach me too. Suddenly, I could see the faces of everyone who had disappeared. Their hollow eyes, their vacant expressions. I could feel them watching me from the shadows. They were all still out there, trapped in the same system, doomed to fade away, erased from the world. The assistant looked at me with a knowing look in their eyes. "You're already part of it, aren't you?" they said softly. "You've already been marked. You've seen too much. Now, you're just like the rest of us, stuck in the cycle, a ghost of who you used to be." The room felt like it was closing in around me. The walls were suffocating. I had no way out. The deeper I went, the more I realized that I wasn't the one in control. I wasn't the one calling the shots. I had become a piece of the puzzle. And now, the machine was starting to turn its gears around me. I stood up abruptly, my heart racing. "I have to go," I muttered, my voice barely above a whisper. The assistant didn't try to stop me. They just watched me leave, their face a mask of resignation. They knew the truth, just like I did now. And like them, I knew there was no going back. Once you entered the world of perfection, it claimed you. There was no escape from the curse, and now, there was no escape from me. I could feel it closing in on me now. The truth I'd uncovered, the web I'd walked into, it was no longer just a matter of understanding. It was a matter of survival. The deeper I went, the more it felt like the walls were closing in around me. And I knew I was being watched. I had always thought of Beyoncé as a distant figure, someone untouchable. But now, I couldn't escape the realization that her world was my world too. Her curse was no longer just something I knew about. It was something I was a part of. I had been marked the moment I asked the question. And now, I was sinking deeper into it, unable to pull myself out. The pact had already been made. I had crossed the line. There was one person left who I needed to speak to. One last person who knew more than they had ever let on. Someone who had been around Beyoncé longer than anyone. I tracked them down in a small cafe, their face hidden under the brim of a cap, their eyes darting nervously as I approached. This was the last piece of the puzzle. "Do you know what's happening?" I asked, my voice tight. "Do you know what the price is?" The person shifted uncomfortably, glancing around before speaking. "You don't understand," they whispered, voice cracking. "The price isn't just about people fading away, becoming ghosts. It's much worse." I leaned in, desperate to know. "What do you mean?" "They take what's most important to you. Not just your life, not just your soul. They take your humanity," they said, almost choking on the words. "You lose everything. Your memories, your identity. You're erased. You don't even know who you are anymore." I felt my stomach churn. This wasn't just about death, it was about being erased from existence, wiped clean from the memories of everyone who ever knew you. A life without purpose, a life without you. The final price wasn't something physical. It was your very essence. Once you crossed that line, once you got too close to perfection, you weren't just part of the curse. You became nothing. I couldn't breathe. The truth was overwhelming, suffocating. I had already crossed that point of no return. I was already losing pieces of myself, fading into the background of my own life. The person's voice lowered to a whisper. I tried to walk away. I thought I could escape, but the moment I tried to break the pact, I lost myself. I don't even remember who I used to be. I'm a shell, just like the rest of them. The weight of their words hit me like a freight train. There was no escaping it. The curse had already taken root, and I was too far gone. I stood up, my legs shaky, my mind spinning. It was done. The price had been paid. And the worst part, the price would continue. It wasn't just about Beyoncé anymore. It was about everyone who had ever gotten too close. There was no escape from the darkness now, no way out. I was done pretending I could escape. The truth had become my reality, and now there was no distinction between the two. I had learned too much, and now I was living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The curse that had once seemed like a distant concept was now my entire existence. Every step I took felt like I was being pulled deeper into an abyss that I could never crawl out of. The faces of those who had disappeared, people who once meant something to me, stared back at me from the depths of my memory. They were all gone, consumed by the very machine I had learned too much about. I wasn't just afraid anymore. I was losing myself. I couldn't recognize my own reflection anymore. It was as if I was slowly fading, becoming a ghost. I had a choice, I realized. There was a moment, a single moment where I could make the ultimate decision to save myself, to escape the curse, but the cost would be unimaginable. To break free, to pull away from the grip of perfection, I would have to give up everything. Not just my identity, but the very essence of who I was. As I stood there, contemplating the final decision, something inside me snapped. The urge to survive, to keep my humanity, was too strong. I knew what had to be done. But as I prepared to make the ultimate choice, something strange happened. A feeling, a pull, a force, something I couldn't see or touch, wrapped itself around me. It was the machine, the curse. It was already taking what was left of me and pulling me back into its web. I couldn't escape. Not now. Not ever. The realization hit me like a thunderclap. There was no way out. The price of perfection wasn't just about losing your life, your soul, your memories. It was about losing everything that made you you. And once you stepped into this world, once you became part of it, there was no going back. I stood frozen in place, my mind screaming for release, but my body unable to move. The machine had me now, and there was nothing I could do to fight it. And just like that, the curse claimed me. I was swallowed whole by the darkness, and the last thing I remembered was the sound of my own name fading away. I became just another shadow, another lost soul, a forgotten part of the system. My life, my very existence was erased, and all that was left was an empty shell. And that's the price of perfection. Once you know, once you're part of it, you're never truly free again.